Howdy, folks. Welcome to 2X Labs. I like to bring y'all people that I have had on my old show, Sex Talk with Erica Miley, because they're just such rad individuals. I have for you Dr. Bianca Laureano. Welcome. You are an author, a sex certified supervisor for sex educators, and an abortion doula. We were talking right beforehand that a lot has changed for both of us since we saw each other last. So I wanted to make sure we got all of the things. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. It's a whole new world. So yeah, glad we're together.
A whole new world, and it should have the terrible piano playing behind us.
It's definitely terrible mode.
So in this world, I'm just so glad that you're in it, because you've been a fierce advocate for reproductive justice and bodily autonomy. Can you share a little bit about your work and what's most urgent in your advocacy post-Roe?
Yeah. So I've been working with communities who are often the most marginalized in our societies. So young people who are immigrants or undocumented or documented even, as if we're paying attention, and communities of color or that are racialized as anything other than white in this country. A lot of the most vulnerable populations in our communities who need the support and care that a lot of us offer, but are unable to access us because maybe there is a variety of things like hard to, access us because of finances or
Yeah.
language that we speak or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So those are the communities that I work with the most, but I'm definitely pivoting a little bit to focus also on supporting sexuality professionals who want to do the work and want to continue to do it even during this regime and shift,
Yes.
but want to do it for the world that we're currently in. And the way that we were trained is not ready, did not prepare us to be ready for this world
No.
that we're in. So
Bianca, we're saying this again. We're saying this again. Like, I think we had this conversation around COVID,
yeah,
and here we are again.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
the providers, educators, we just were not trained to handle such a serious crisis.
it's true.
It's just a wild world.
Uh,
So, I mean, a lot of us, sex therapy providers, a lot of abortion providers, a lot of researchers, educators, the things that we hear is that this regime, I like how you put it, is likely to push for a federal abortion ban in 2025. So, what are some of the most immediate threats to bodily autonomy that therapists, healthcare providers, educators should be aware of?
Yeah, I think with this federal abortion ban, one of the things that we need to keep in mind, and I think a lot of people, maybe it's a coping strategy, or maybe it's like their response to trauma. Y'all are the therapists, you can tell me. But I think a lot of people don't realize how bad it is already and how bad it
Yes.
was before the Dobbs decision. Right? So this
Yes.
whole conversation around is abortion protected or not? What do we really need to be afraid of? The Hyde Amendment has been on the books since Roe v. Wade was brought into law, which says federal funds cannot go towards paying for abortion care. And that's
Yes.
for anybody who is on Medicaid, Medi-Cal, whatever it
Yes.
is. So the states that do cover that for people who are on those health insurance policies, they're using state funds, not federal funds.
Yes.
And that's an important thing to keep in mind. So if you're in states
Mhm.
like Washington, Oregon, California, Illinois, New York, etc., you can still access abortion care if you're one of those
Mhm.
recipients. But if you're in any really of the states in the South, except for
Mhm.
like New Mexico, you are unable to do that.
Exactly.
So it
States like
forces people.
Idaho.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And so the thing that I think is happening that people haven't really yet understood is that anti-abortionists have been chipping away at Roe since it passed. And that's literally how we got here.
Yeah.
Were things like waiting period laws, where you
Mhm.
have to get options counseling. I'm going to put options counseling in quotes because it literally is so paternalistic where it's like, are you sure you know what you want? All your options. And then wait 3 days
Oh,
to think about it.
and you have to see the heartbeat, or you have to do all of these steps to
Exactly. Look at the
confirm what your choice is.
exactly. Look at the sonogram. Like, it's such a violation, not only of
Yeah.
body autonomy, but of all of our senses, right? I think sometimes people think
Yeah.
body autonomy is just about what happens to my body as far as like what impacts it, like the touch, the feel, the whatever. But I think
Mhm.
we also need to expand that into what our body experiences in general, like
Yes.
the sensations. So being forced to hear a heartbeat for something that you're like, this is dividing cells. It is
Uh,
not a heartbeat, and maybe you're lying to me in this recording, or and I
mhm.
want to look at this image, and you're not going to let me up from this seat unless I do. Like all of those things are a violation of body autonomy as well.
Yeah.
And I think that is definitely another piece to layer on, that our body autonomy has been violated again and again and again,
Yes.
even when we had abortion being accessible
Absolutely.
across all the states, at least up to, 12 weeks. And now with the bans where people cannot access abortion in many states, more than half
Mhm.
the states have them, that is leading to trends like death, right? Like, let's be
Yes.
real. People are dying. Pregnant people are dying. Most of
Mhm.
those are going to be assigned female at birth.
Mhm.
People who do identify as women. So we're losing the women in our families and communities because they
Yes.
literally cannot access the medical care that they need if they're
Mhm.
experiencing a miscarriage, or
Yep.
if they've decided that they do not and cannot become a parent in this
Yes.
moment. So I think something that many anti-abortionists didn't realize, or maybe it was the messaging that just didn't resonate, was
Mm.
this language that we heard a lot around abortion as medical care. And it is, right? Like, it's a medical procedure.
Truly.
And
Truly.
a lot of anti-abortionists don't understand why people say that, because they're
Mhm.
only thinking about elective abortions. There are
Yes.
people who want to be parents. There are people who wanted to carry a pregnancy to term. There are people who are devastated that they had a
Yep.
miscarriage and they don't
Absolutely.
want to stay in pain. They don't want to have to sit and wait for whatever fetal mass comes out of their body.
Yes.
And this can happen at any point in time in the pregnancy.
Yes.
And when we get rid of or remove abortion care, it re-traumatizes, continues to traumatize, and can also be fatal for the pregnant people who are experiencing a miscarriage, an ectopic pregnancy,
Absolutely.
because the medical intervention to save that person's life is abortion.
Yes.
So when people don't understand that, or when they
Mhm.
say, well, that's not what I voted for, actually it is, because you were
Mhm.
uninformed
Yes.
or lied to, or you allowed your, religious or spiritual definition of the world to
Mhm.
dictate other people's access to care. Whatever it
Absolutely.
is, you were lied to. And this is now where we're at. So we're seeing a lot of people who want to be parents dying as well. So it's not just
Mhm.
this, well, you got pregnant without thinking about it and now you have to deal with it. It's
Mhm.
people who wanted to be parents who are
Yes.
dying and no longer able to care for their families. And
Yes.
that, I think, is devastating as well. And that is a current trend that we're definitely seeing. And I think a lot of states, another trend we're going to notice is that a lot of
Mhm.
states will not be reporting those deaths as deaths due to abortion not being offered.
Mhm.
To define it in another way, just as deaths due to COVID complications are being identified in other ways as well, to
Mhm.
decrease the numbers of deaths due to COVID complications, just as they're trying to redefine what disability is in the US Census. So we have less disabled people identifying as disabled. It's all a scam. It's
Yep.
all a
It's
scam.
all a
Yeah,
scam. It's all a grift. The grifters are in charge, so all of it is going to continue to be a grift. I think
exactly.
there's the other part, the we're going to talk about the patchwork of state laws, but having lived in different states, having needed abortion care myself for a pregnancy I wanted, that I planned for, did all the right things for, in quotation marks. Like, it's wild to watch it happen. And even when I needed that care, which was now have a child after that. He is 12.
Uh-huh,
So it was 13 years ago. And
uh-huh,
my doctor luckily had access to different hospitals. So I could still have my doctor perform the procedure that was absolutely necessary,
uh-huh.
but it couldn't be in the hospital that I chose because the hospital that I chose would have required me to go to a board and argue for it. And
Yeah.
my doctor said, no, I'm not putting you through that. And
Uh-huh.
that was before the fall of Roe.
Right.
And so I just want to say that because I think it brings home your point
Uh-huh.
that it's only gotten worse. And you all that wanted this were absolutely lied to.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely lied to. And the
Yeah.
patchwork of state laws, we're going to talk about that. So, since the fall of Roe, all of these states have different laws controlling this desperately needed healthcare access.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you already started the trends. You already started talking about them. What are some of the most concerning trends happening in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, aside from death, would be also being
Yeah.
unable to get medical care. I mean, that's also been just the history of medical care in the United States, where
Yes.
people just cannot access the care that they deserve, that they
Yes.
need, or even optimal care. Right. So
Mhm.
I think what that really looks like usually is thinking about, especially for therapists and medical providers, what are the closest hospital systems that are in your network that you can refer your clients to? And then how
Mhm.
many of those are run by a religious doctrine or community or organization? Because those are the
Exactly.
places that are not that are not going to fire a medical provider if they say, I'm not
Yeah.
going to do this, it's abortion, it goes against our whatever. You're just gonna have to wait it out and like wait for the 16-week fetus to fall out of your body before we can do a dilation and curettage. Basic, what you
Yeah.
learn 101 in medical school kind of procedure. I mean, it's something
Yeah.
like a midwife can do at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
But for whatever reason, doctors want to be up against midwives that have been saving lives for generations before we even had a Western
Absolutely.
medical field. Anyway, so I think that is another piece. Being unable to access medical care, period. I think
Mm.
a lot of pregnant people, especially in states that have banned abortion, what we're noticing is a lot of GYNs, OBs, midwives, and more are afraid to practice because of the
Yep.
way that abortion providers are being criminalized. And one of the things that
Mhm.
we need to keep in mind is that abortion providers are medical doctors, right? They are
That's right.
medical providers. They have training in a range of things. They have a
Mhm.
specialization. So just like sex therapists or trauma
Yep.
therapists or therapists that do EMDR, that's your specialization, but you're still part of a larger medical group. And
Right.
this group of medical providers is the number one group so far that has been targeted for violence
Yes.
just because of the work that they do. I can't think right now of another medical provider that has been targeted with violence, murder, like that we need special laws to protect them entering into their
Right.
workspace, right? Not to say that can't happen with any other specialization, but like this is something that's been
Mhm.
happening for over 30 years. We
Mhm.
have data on it. And since the Dobbs decision, that violence has gone up by 300%. And we have that data from abortion providers telling us that. And so what ends up happening is people are afraid to practice, not
Mhm.
just abortion care, but any kind of reproductive sexual health care that falls under the possibility of being criminalized. And it
Mhm.
happens with trans affirming care. It's happening with
Yes.
people who are working with young people with anything regarding their sexual health. That's what's coming next. So if you
Yes.
have listeners or providers who are like, well, I don't do trans affirming care, I just work with people who identify as women or as female at birth. For you, and you probably have some perimenopausal or menopausal
That's
clients who
right.
need hormone replacement therapy. And guess what?
Correct.
That's the exact same thing that trans affirming care is for many people as well. And so,
Mhm.
why are we choosing to align
Mhm.
ourselves with possible policies and medical outcomes that will lead to death and
Right.
harm and a decrease in, neurological functioning, cognitive functioning, like all the
Suicide.
information? Yeah. Like the data that we have now coming out about perimenopause and menopause is radical. It's new.
It's what the number of like the we need to do a whole like a whole other episode we're gonna do one about perimenopause and menopause and just the suicide outcomes that we're seeing
Yeah.
that's only happened we've only gotten those numbers in the last 2 years.
Yeah. And it's our age group, right? And
That's
it's not people
wild.
in a particular it's like 35 to 47 or something.
Mhm.
It's a very particular group of people. And maybe I made that number up, maybe it's somewhere accurate, but it's younger
Mhm.
people. It's people
Yes.
our age. And I think that is something that for many people, they think, oh, well, I can't become pregnant anymore. I'm over a certain age. I'm not going to become pregnant. And I remind people we're living in the future. So
That's
even though
right.
we're living in the future and there's this repressive experience that we're having about building our own families, there's also this really weird space where people can get pregnant if they're 60. They can still carry a pregnancy to term if they get the support that they need through.
Janet Jackson showed us she was in her 50s.
Exactly. And I think what we're also noticing is that that is also fragile. That
Absolutely.
option to build our families the way that we can, whether we have the means or not, is very fragile because next to come up on the chopping block, once they get rid of abortion care, trans affirming care, next thing is going to be IVF.
That's
Next
right.
thing is going to be the research
Mhm.
that comes from like stem cells and things of that nature. So it's all going to be focused on not keeping people alive, yet
Mhm.
still expecting groups of people to create families. And we'll
Yes.
just be straight up and be very clear that, like, this is a white supremacist agenda in all the ways you
Yes.
can imagine, because the only people who can birth more white babies are white people who have a
Mhm.
uterus, right? So
Yes.
it's a very strategic approach to wanting to continue to populate a white race, which is so
Mhm.
deeply embedded in a white supremacist agenda. So if you're a
Yes.
white person with a uterus listening and you are pro-abortion, that is just one way that you are in violation of a white supremacist agenda. And people
Mhm.
want us killed just because of that, because we're not
Yes.
supporting this continuation of birthing more white babies. And that is, I think, a really important piece for us to keep in mind, because it's intra-racial violence that we're
Yes.
seeing, especially among abortion providers who are being
Mhm.
targeted. It is white abortion providers being targeted by
Mhm.
white supremacists, militia groups, radical extremists within their religious framework, targeting those white doctors, right? It is
Yes.
not this interracial whatever phenomena. It is white people harming other white people again
That's
and
right.
again and again. And we know that because we have all of the public records of the people who have successfully murdered medical doctors have been all white men with a particular
Yep.
background and a particular lens. And we have proof of the transcripts from those
Yes.
conversations.
There's the receipts. We
Exactly.
have the receipts, just like with school shooters. We have the receipts. But here we go. America voted for a regime that is absolutely going to just keep taking it away.
Right.
Taking it away.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
what the potential federal abortion ban, what does it mean for healthcare providers, especially in those restrictive states?
It means that they will not be able to practice. It means that
Yes.
they may have to leave the state, which means that
Which
there's
they're
gonna
doing
be
in mass already.
right. People are already leaving. They're already choosing not to practice. It might also mean that we're gonna have people leaving this country as well in search of being able to work and still offer the care that they want. It also means that we might also see some more daily acts of subversion and radical resistance among those populations, which
Yes.
can be a radicalizing moment for many of those medical providers who never saw themselves as activists or organizers or whatever.
Yeah.
And now they're going to be really pushed into having to decide, what am I going to do? And I think
Yes.
this is really going to show up in the therapeutic space. If you're working with
Mhm.
those providers, they're going to be struggling with, what do I do with my career? What kind
Absolutely.
of action plans or safety plans do I need to incorporate now? What do I need
Mhm.
to think about? Right. So instead of having for a lot of certain states, they had abortion providers who would come once or twice a week to provide care. And they would travel across the states because they
Mhm.
worked clearly supportive and trained medical providers offering abortion care. So
Mhm.
those people have lost jobs in many ways, but also are very limited to the kind of work and care that they can do. So we're going to be watching and witnessing less and less medical providers wanting to be trained in reproductive health care. And that's
Yes.
gonna have a ripple effect. What does that mean? Well, we're probably not gonna have a lot of people who can do cancer screenings regarding reproductive
Yes.
health. And not just uterine cancers, cervical cancers, and more, but also like penile cancers, right? Like, we're
Correct.
not gonna be able
Prostate cancers.
exactly. Exactly. It is going to be all of those, in addition to like oral cancer, right? Which we know
Yes.
often comes from an HPV strain. So like these are things that I think people don't realize how interconnected and indivisible many of
Yes.
our relationships and experiences are with other people on the planet. And, for these people assigned male at birth who identify as men to really think we get to control certain people's bodies and what happens to them, it really results in you losing access to controlling your own body. You think controlling
Correct.
somebody else's body means you get more control over yours. It's a wild misunderstanding about how that works. You're not going to be able to get your Viagra, right? You're not going to be
Correct.
able to get your Cialis.
Or the testosterone.
Exactly. That you need.
Especially in older cis men. Like, you're not gonna be able to get any of that stuff.
Exactly. It's going to be considered a narcotic. And I think that is some stuff where people might say, we're so far away from that. No, we're not. That can happen by December. Are you kidding me? We could have
Correct.
armed military on our streets by mid-April. Like, it's not that far away. And I think a lot of people also have this idea of like, oh my gosh, it's going to be like The Handmaid's Tale. It has already been like that for some of us, right? So
Yes.
that felt like a fantasy world or some dystopian
Mhm.
future for some people, but that was literally the reality for many people, many disabled people who are in
Yes.
conservatorships or guardianships. not being able to determine where they want to go, what relationships they want to have, whether or not they can engage in a sexual relationship or expression. That's already happening. And I think what we're noticing now is that people with a certain level of middle classness or some level of power that they never knew they had are starting to feel the impact that many of us who have been vulnerable and impacted by these forms of violence have survived. But a lot of us are also like, are you serious? Get it together. Feel your feelings at the therapist, but like,
Yes.
do the work.
Yes.
Show up for the work.
Get it together. It's already you're late. You're late.
Yes.
But I think it's important for us to be reminding them that this has been going on for a very long time and that it can happen incredibly fast. And I can tell you from being a gender affirming care therapist that having been in states who've already started to ban it, before Trump got into office, we were receiving threats from a Department of Health that was being weaponized by that governor. And that is when you receive those kinds of threats, it is absolutely terrifying. You then have to confront truly what this means. And I consult all the time with other MDs, and many of them, because of some of the changes in that state, it was Florida, said, Erica, I can't consult anymore. It absolutely is breaking my heart, and I'm having to think about leaving the state because as a pediatrician who helps youth, if I have a kid come to me with these concerns and I come to you and I tell you and you don't tell their parents, I lose my license.
Right. That mandated reporter thing is definitely about surveillance culture. And I think that's another piece that a lot of, not just therapists, but sex professionals, we've noticed the surveillance piece with like how the algorithm wants to block us or shadow ban us or limit or take our post down or whatever it is. But that's also always been happening to people who are anti-racist, who are fighting against all forms of oppression. I think we're just feeling it more so over the past decade, a little bit more fully. But the point that I really want to make is around access, and not just access, but the way that people are finding out this information using the internet. Like, we all have spaceships in the palm of our hand in this country. Many of us do.
Right.
Majority of us do. And, those are really powerful tools that are also being misused. And we're being surveilled in so many ways. And I think it's not just this idea of, I'm going to go through, let them scan my face at the airport to get through TSA more quickly. You can say no to that. Like, that is them. That is you agreeing to a surveillance culture. And I think we don't notice how deeply embedded we're already in this surveilling state because we're like, that's just how it is. Oh, that's so much more convenient. I can just walk through whatever. And it's like, yeah, but you're giving up portions of your privacy.
Yes.
Even if you don't go in yet into your, I don't know, your app. And it's like, can we find your location? If you said yes, that's a surveillance tool, right? All of those are examples of being able to tap into, where are you? What are you doing there? What resources are you using? They can look into other parts of your bank accounts. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but this is just the truth, right? If you spend a little bit of
where we
time
are
online, looking into the facial recognition technology that Facebook was promoting 15 years ago to tag your friends in a picture, that is literally surveillance culture and what people are using today to find and identify quote unquote terrorists, right? All of that connects. It all plays a role. And, some people have critique my teaching because I tell people, you can keep your cameras off. I don't care. I believe that you're here.
Same.
Use the chat, use the emojis. I don't care. And people are like, but how do you know that they're really there? How do you know that says? And I'm like, that's your surveillance culture thinking that it needs to be there to ensure that people can learn better. When really, people learn better when they can be their full selves. And sometimes they need to live bed life to be their full selves. Sometimes they need to chest feed or body feed their child to be fully present. Why are we not allowing people that space to have privacy? So I think those are some examples of, just really quickly, how surveillance culture is really embedded and how so many of us are comfortable upholding it without ever considering the ramifications that are quickly coming.
And I think you're onto something. I think that is a larger umbrella of body autonomy rights, and so I think surveillance belongs there. And I really want to bring this to some of the communities that are the most at risk. How are BIPOC, LGBTQIA2S+, individuals, disabled people, low-income folks proportionately affected by these restrictions?
Yeah, I think for many of the listeners who are in like rural or prairie communities who
Mm-hmm.
work with people who know that they don't have immediate access to certain types of care, where telehealth is really one of the main ways they can access any kind of medical care, and that being removed come April 1st. I think we're noticing how that's really going to impact people's ability to access the care that they need. But I think another layer to that is how are people even using the internet or certain types of spaces to build community and to stay connected. Last time we talked, we were really talking about COVID. And as disabled people, we know that the internet
Mm-hmm.
has been the one place where we can meet safely and be together is on virtual space. And
Yes.
so virtual space is being targeted. If we're not able to access it, if we're not abiding by these surveillance level, whatever, we
Mm-hmm.
cannot get connected. We cannot be together.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a radical thing, right? When disabled people can be together. It's a
Yes.
radical thing when any of us who experience any kind of forms of oppression can be together because they don't want us to do that, right? Isolation, institutionalization, detention, more incarceration, all of those are direct violation of liberation. And if we're
Mm-hmm.
really wanting to really embrace a liberatory framework where we do believe every person gets to have the human right to make a decision about what happens to their body, how they want to imagine their life, and more, if we're valuing self-determination, then we really need to divest from the systems of surveillance as well as the systems that tell us we need to remove people's rights to say yes or no to a camera on or off, or
Mm-hmm.
yes or no to telehealth options. And I think one of the things that we've seen again and again is that people's sexual expression and relationships do end up happening online because that's safe for people. It's a safe place for
Yes.
fantasy, for evolution, for exploration. And if those things get removed, so do those forms of expression and exploration, which will definitely impact our work. We might even
Yep.
see a lot more criminalized behavior, a lot more
Mm-hmm.
people having to engage with the criminal incarceration system and having like
Yes.
court mandated care or whatever else falls under that.
Yes.
And I think that is a big problem. Oftentimes, when people want to come to me and talk about the biases that they have around supporting young people who are exploring their sexual identities and desires and attractions, they're always making up these stories that they're having so much sex, they're having so much sex. And it's like, you live in a zip code in Kansas. What makes you think that this trans kid knows any other trans people in the neighborhood or on
Correct.
the zip code? They're probably going online to find each other. And so that means
Yes.
the sexual activity is more digitized. It's more
Mm-hmm.
focused on like maybe sending pictures or sending fan fiction or erotica or whatever it may
Mm-hmm.
be. It's not going to be exchanging body fluids, right? It's not
No.
going to be planning this whole like, I'll pick you up at your home. I mean, maybe it will eventually, but I think some of the really introductory ways that people who are isolated, we already know this, they're connecting
Mm-hmm.
in a particular way. It's going to be the exact same situation
Yes.
that will happen for many more people coming down the road. And this is why, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but not really, but this is why net neutrality laws are so important. This regime is
Mm-hmm.
really getting rid of net neutrality laws. And that's kind of partially the Biden administration's fault because they didn't solidify or protect them when in office as they could have. And
Mm-hmm.
so now those are being overturned. And the connection to net neutrality laws is deeply connected to Roe v. Wade and abortion care, because one
Mm-hmm.
of the arguments for having net neutrality, which is a good thing, we want net
Yes, we
neutrality
do.
laws. We want to be
We
able to have
do.
people to decide what information they want to access online. People get to
Correct.
make that decision for themselves. And when we don't have net neutrality laws, we're basically saying, hey, Google, you get to determine whether or not someone can access Erica's website
Mm-hmm.
quicker than accessing Bianca's, or
Mm-hmm.
nobody gets to access either of those websites because we want to center accessing the CDC that has very specific biased information, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want net neutrality because nobody should be able to access information more than anybody else. But aside from that, we also want encryption, right? And encryption is
Yes.
also a really important component, especially for therapists who are communicating with their clients. You want to
Yes.
use an encryption to encryption, two-way encryption type of app, for example, to communicate with
Yes.
your clients. So a lot of people have been switching from WhatsApp to Signal or moving from like
Mm-hmm.
their iPhone iMessages to Signal because Signal is the one app that we know of right now that has
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed encryption both ways, which means
Yes.
that if they ever get subpoenaed to, testify against whatever for offering whatever trans-affirming care and proof that you texted, they won't
Mm-hmm.
be able to produce anything because it's been encrypted. WhatsApp, owned by Meta, which is Facebook, they've already abided with the police. They've already turned over that. We know it again and again and again.
Yes.
Zuckerberg has said, yes, we'll work with the police. So we know that, right? So I really encourage, this is one actionable step for therapists today, is
Mm-hmm.
figure out what you need to do to move yourself onto Signal. If you are
Yes.
communicating with your clients through text-based resources or even through voicemail, encourage people
Yes.
to only communicate with you in that way. Do not use your Google Voice.
No, do
That's
not
another
use your
area.
Google Voice. It
Yeah.
is not it is not HIPAA compliant in any way, shape, or form.
Yes.
And there are companies that if you are using a encrypted HIPAA compliant platform that is an electronic health record system that hasn't been bought one of these large companies that is then using AI to scrape our clients and patients' data, you're probably doing okay. But yes, stay away from texting, stay
Yeah.
away from all of these places because again, I think we're letting therapists and other healthcare providers because they're not the therapists aren't the only other one that are using telehealth and telemedicine.
Yeah.
So making sure that you're using things like Signal to protect their information so it does not get into the wrong hands. And I already did an episode about how to shift your language in documentation. Go take a listen to that. And I'm curious for you, what are some of because we're already talking to the providers and what they need to be doing because we are seeing a ton of our clients and patients coming in with the fears that you are talking about are very, very much a reality that is already here, but is also coming quickly. So, what are some of the trauma responses we might see in clients and patients
Yeah. I
facing
think,
reproductive oppression? And how
yeah.
can we validate those responses rather than pathologizing them?
Yeah. It's such a good question. And I think the first thing is to say there isn't going to be one particular way that we need to look out for. It's going to be
Hmm.
multi pronged, it's going to be complicated, it's going to be layered, it's going to be a shapeshifter, really.
Hmm.
And we know that that's what trauma is. It's a shapeshifter in our body minds and impacting us in a
Hmm.
particular way. And so first we're going to notice it through like silence and people using silence as a form of resistance, I think, as
Hmm.
well, because they're hyper aware of that surveillance piece. And they're also trying to figure out, can I trust you? And do you know the power that you have in offering me a diagnosis or in reporting me in a particular way? So really being clear about, okay, what do I do with a client who is present, but who is unwilling to share more or talk a little bit
Mm.
more in session? What can I do? How can I explore that? Or do I need to stop being with them? As a provider, I think that's a really important piece there. So it requires providers to more innovative approaches to building relationships and connections, right? So it
Yeah.
requires us to practice a relational approach, not just as the provider, but literally as the human being who wants to connect with other human beings. So I think we're
Mhm.
definitely going to see a lot of silence showing up in a variety of ways. I think we're also going to see a lot of defiance, a lot of
Mm.
people saying, no, I'm not going to go to the doctor, or no, I'm not going to do that thing, or no, I'm going to avoid it. And I say that to you as someone who does that all the time. We
Yes.
already know this as disabled people. A lot of us know that we need to lie sometimes in able to get the care that we need. And
Absolutely.
in our society, lying is bad. I think a lot of
Mhm.
people, you don't want to be a liar. We're all liars. Can we just shut the
Correct.
fuck up for a minute? We all
Everyone is
lie.
manipulative. We need to not take it personally.
Right. We all lie. And I think the kind of lies that I'm talking about specifically with like disability community or even with any marginalized community is that I know if I say to someone that I'm seeking gender affirming care and they ask me, well, have you ever been diagnosed with a mental health issue? I'm going to lie and say no. Because if
Mhm.
I say yes in any capacity, it could be garden variety depression because I'm living on the planet in 2025. Or it could be
Correct.
something like schizophrenia. It could be a range of things. No matter what it is, they're going to halt that and say, oops, well, we need to talk to and investigate and do more. So it's going to delay care or maybe
Mhm.
even cancel it out completely. So I
Yes.
totally understand why some people be like, no, it's cool, because we need to understand the ways that people accessing the care that they need to feel more comfortable in their body mind that they have is
Mhm.
going to help alleviate some of those stressors and anxiety producers that impact mental health. right? So
Yes.
so lies are okay. I'm sure many people who are parents have lied about the person who comes to your children's room and leaves them money when the bones of their head fall out, right? Like that is a lie. Like
That's
we
right.
tell people lies all the time. And so
That's
some
right.
lies are bigger than others. But we literally got here because of how
Hmm.
good of liars, how good the liars are in the current
How
regime.
many how many people have been entirely honest when their medical provider has asked them how many drinks they have a week?
Exactly. Exactly.
We know for a fact, looking at the data, that that is usually not the case.
Right, right. And we live in states where cannabis is now legal. So asking,
Mhm,
do you smoke? I need to ask, smoke what? What are you asking? Are you asking about nicotine? Are you asking me
mhm,
about cannabis? What are you really asking about? Right? Like that's another piece that impacts our states in a very particular way. And it gets really specific, right? We need to be clear about like what are you asking
mhm.
me? How many partners do I have? Well, let me see. If I can recall, this is how many I can recall. Or if I can't, then I'm not giving you the accurate number. I mean,
Yeah.
all of those things, even people's, when was your last normal menstrual cycle? I'm perimenopausal. I can't even remember. Like, I can tell you the last time I bled, it wasn't normal though.
I
There's
have an
no
IUD and I
lie.
got made sure it was changed right after that election. And so I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
And like I think the thing that I hear you exploring is this, that the trauma responses we are likely to see are going to outwardly, we're going to be seeing them avoiding telling the truth about what kind of activities that are happening in their life
right.
out of protection.
Yeah.
We're going to see them avoiding medical care altogether out of fear. How can healthcare providers and therapists address this medical distrust?
Right. I mean, there isn't just one right answer, right? So I just want to say that first. And it's
Yes.
going to look different for a variety of different providers. I think the first one is to realize that it exists. And it's not new. It has existed for generations and centuries. And it's
Yeah.
not just because people mistrust the US government or imperialism or capitalism, but it's also because people don't trust other human beings either, right? Like we need to keep in mind that human beings have hurt each other time and time
Mhm.
again and will continue to do so. It's not a structural or systemic one
Mhm.
alone. It is also a human one as well. So I like to invite people to think about what kind of human do you want to be in this changing time? You know, how do you want to show up? Who do you want to be? What's going to make you feel confident and
What side of history are you going to be on?
yeah, exactly. Like, where are you recognizing that you do have power and how to strategically use it? I think a lot of providers don't want to always acknowledge the power that we and they have because
Mhm.
it feels weird to have power over other people. But the
It
reality
does.
is, there are ways to strategically use the power that we have to lessen the
Mhm.
oppression or to help doula someone through a system that we know can be terrifying, traumatizing, and overwhelming. So I would say what providers can do is learn the systems that you and your clients have to navigate. Because
Mhm.
sometimes when you feel like there's nothing you can do, because that's going to be happening already if it hasn't already for people, the times when you feel like there's nothing I can do, witnessing is powerful. And also
Mhm.
helping people through understanding this is what it's going to be like when you contact that psychiatrist. This might be what you encounter when you try to get your progesterone at the pharmacy. This is what might
Mhm.
occur if A, B, or C and helping them through it. So if that happens, this is what you should do. Really guiding them to understand this is the structure and the system that you're going to have to navigate. I'm here and with it, with you in it. And
Yes.
it's going to feel crappy, but you have me as a resource. And let's figure out who else can be your resources. If it gets to the point where a woman needs to get her husband or male partner to get her contraceptive, because that's definitely another step that's coming, then let's figure out what lavender marriages do we need to pretend that we're in, right? Like,
Correct.
how can we strategically connect and collaborate? And I think providers really need to start thinking more expansively about what is possible and not
Yes.
being so scared about breaking the law because the laws are changing, right?
Yep.
They're not static
Mhm.
and again, like anything can happen at any point in time. I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to lose my license or I don't want to do A, B, or C. Yes, and I just want to remind us that people have been
Mhm.
sitting in circle for generations to process
Yes.
trauma, to hear one another. It is just in this point
Absolutely.
in time that it has been within a Western
Mhm.
idea of quote unquote mental health. But people
Yes.
have always been doing this work in a different capacity, especially with
Mhm.
plant medicine, which people call psychedelics, that has
Yes.
always been a core part of healing for many Indigenous communities across the
Absolutely.
globe. Yet our country is making it a pharmacological issue. They're
Yep.
making it a capitalist issue. They're
Yes.
removing a lot of that healing framework. I mean,
It's
we see it with like Tantra in our field, where people are
yes.
watering down Tantra as a practice, when it really has a spiritual component. Anyways, I feel like I'm going off a little bit of a
Oh,
tangent, but
you and I we can tangent away. I know it. I mean, that we like to talk to each other. So because my brain is going like, well, and I think that the idea that clinicians are going to have to think about what their responsibility is differently versus the world that they were trained in, I think is it's incredibly terrifying as a clinician, right? But we also have to acknowledge that there are people who are in office now who will likely criminalize how we have done our work already, how we have been doing our work, whether
yeah.
you're a sex therapist, whether you're a sex educator, whether you are a RN, whether you are an OBGYN and any kind of MD, our work is actually being threatened. And so thinking outside of this box really truly is helping clients, patients, the people we're educating reclaim a sense of agency in a radical way.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I think that is a piece that people sometimes don't always recognize. They think that, oh, I'm
Yeah.
just doing one thing. I've met a bunch of therapists who also think therapy isn't political. And I'm like, are you serious? Are you looking around? It
I d-
totally is political. I
how?
think,
Who are you working with? That's what I want to know.
right. How are you doing what you're doing? I think another piece around like strategic use of power, especially for people who have it in a very
Hmm.
particular way, like medical providers or therapists. I've heard a lot of like white cis therapists say to me, but I've had this incel or this Nazi or this insert identity here that's harmful and oppressive and gross come to me seeking care. What do I do? I don't think I
Hmm.
should do it. That's going to violate my relationship and my commitment to anti-racism, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, who do you know could? Who else but you? Because
Right?
they're not going to come to me. They'll
Yeah.
come to you. And so you're in a moment of time where you have to think about, can I show up for this kind of anti-racist approach? Is this
Yes.
person clear that this is what my approach is going to include? Are they open to it? And maybe you don't have to say it in the words that you know will activate them. But I think one of the
Hmm.
things that we can consider is really inviting ourselves to think about what is the line of inquiry that we can invite clients to think about when it comes to understanding how we've been socialized and been told lies about our mental
Hmm.
health or about who we're supposed to be or how we're supposed to move. Because if we're really trying to help someone unlearn misogyny, we can't do
Hmm.
it immediately by calling it misogyny. We have to do a little bit more scaffolding. How did you learn what
Yes.
it means to be a man? What does it feel like? I hear you saying
Hmm.
you're exhausted because you feel like you have to be the breadwinner and bring home this and you can't find a job. And who made up those rules? And why do you feel like you have to abide by
Yeah.
a rule that a dead person made because you think
Hmm.
it's the truth? And I think you have to gradually get into those spaces. And there's people with power and access to that can do really amazing information and resource and
Yes.
care and therapeutic interventions, but they're scared because they think, well, I don't want to be seen as a racist or I don't want to be
Yes.
seen as like a Nazi lover. I don't want to be seen as whatever. People
That's not
need
what this is about. That's not what this is about.
some of the most violent and gross people need healing. That's why they're
Correct.
defaulting to grossness and violence. Like, so
Yes.
I really encourage people to think about the reality that, certain therapists are not going to be the ones that people reach out to, other ones are. And what are you going to do in those moments? And do you
Hmm.
have a referral list that is full of other people that you know can do that work? Because offering a powerful referral is another really great way to show up for our communities. So if not you, then who?
Absolutely.
And if you don't know who, then maybe it is you. Or maybe you
I
need to do some
you're
asking.
you're you're giving serious examples. This is something I love about you. You lead me into next questions and we already get into them without me having to ask them. Like I can hear like this the things that we're talking about is the helplessness in therapists who like they're already starting to see it in their clients and patients. So you're that one of the concrete actions you're already talking about is look at your referral list. Who is there? How can you maybe even meet up with some of these folks and start having these harder conversations about what do we do when these things happens. So what other things are concrete actions that
Yeah.
mental health providers, sexual health providers, MDs even can be taking to advocate for their patients?
Yeah. I'll also build a little bit more on the referral list piece because I think it's so, so important. I can't think of any therapist that doesn't already have one.
Right?
But I would say the first thing would be to vet whoever is on your list. Because
Yes.
just because someone told you who you really like and respect and you're in community with that this person is good, you don't know that to be true. It is
Mm-mm.
second-hand knowledge. So you got to vet the people. Do a 30-minute informational interview with people. Ask
Mm-hmm.
them what kind of insurance, ask them what the intake process is like. Inquire in a way so that you know what system they've set up to navigate so you can explain it
Yes.
to clients or potential people reaching out. That's the first thing. And the second thing is to diversify the referrals that you offer. Therapists
Mm-hmm.
love to recommend other therapists and books,
Yes.
but they never want to diversify that and identify other sex professionals. So
Yep.
why don't you have sex educators that you can refer to
That's
on
right.
the referral list? Maybe the person doesn't need a kink-aware professional. Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
need a kink educator, right? Like we
Correct.
charge lower rates. We're a little bit more accessible. We come with a variety of different teaching modalities that might work
Mm-hmm.
for many different ways that people's brains process information. But
Mm-hmm.
also, like, are you in a state where you can refer to a sex worker?
Mm-hmm.
What relationships are you going to build with those sex workers? Right. But
Yes.
also
Or
helping
surrogate
people
partners.
surrogate partner therapy. Exactly. And I think another element to this is, and it ties back to like that net neutrality piece that we were talking about in surveillance. A lot of states are now incorporating age verification laws to access and
Yes.
watch pornography. That is a core issue with net neutrality. They're trying to
Mm-hmm.
couple it and hide it under protecting young people online. They're really just surveilling us. And
Yes.
that can be used for so many harmful things, divorce cases, identifying someone as not a good
Absolutely.
person or whatever. So I think understanding what the laws are that are coming down the pipeline, looking that up, talking with people about it is
Mm-hmm.
really, really important. So educating ourselves on it, but also reaching out to people who do that work. So you might have to also look into who are the data people that are scrubbing our information from the internet to keep us
Yes.
safe. Right? Like that is another piece I think a lot of, especially sex professionals really need to think about how they're maintaining their own personal safety. And so sometimes it means that we need to make sure that we're not going to get doxxed, where people can look us up and reveal our information, where our family lives, who our family members are, and more. Sometimes doxing, people think it's just sharing your email. Doxing is really where people can come to your home and message
Yes.
you and harm you and target you. And we're already there. We've seen it again and
Absolutely.
again. Again, abortion providers are doxed all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
I think what we can do is really look into the spaces that offer a scrubbing of our information from the internet so we can maintain that safety. There's a ton of organizations that do that. You got to figure out the one that works for you. Universities love Delete Me. I
Yeah.
personally have paid and invested in. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
other ones that exist. It does come with a cost. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worth it to protect me and my family so I can continue to do the sexuality work that I'm doing without
Absolutely.
people being able to identify me or quickly or easily find me to target me. And I think that is definitely an important component for sex providers to keep in mind. I
Mm.
think another piece around the telehealth piece, right? Thinking about how these laws are going to impact the work that you do and what are the
Absolutely.
ways that you can get around it regarding
VPNs.
a VPN. And
Get
the,
you a Nord. I'm not even. I am not even sponsored.
yeah,
NordVPN. Love it. Love
it's
it.
true. And this is another example of like a resource where they're in abundance. Some you can pay for, some are
Mm-hmm.
free. How do you know which ones to do it? A free one that again, I'm not being paid. We're not being paid to promote them. But
Mm-hmm.
Proton is a really great
Mm-hmm.
basic
Yes.
101 free option that if you're really like, ooh, if I'm listening to Erica and Bianca and I need to get off the Google suite,
Mm-hmm.
Proton has also created a suite that is in competition with Google. So if you're going to slowly remove yourself off of a Google suite, Proton is a really great option. They can give you your own email
Yes.
address. You've probably seen people's email addresses already at proton dot whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Those already exist. And just because you're learning about it now does not mean it doesn't exist. You are welcome to join us at any point in time. I think this is a really important time to extend ourselves some grace, especially for people who are newly becoming
Absolutely.
radicalized. You are welcome to join us.
Come
It might
on.
not feel like you're always welcome. There
Come
are
on.
certain people that are just going to laugh at your demise or the hard time that you're having. And that's their coping strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like those aren't the people who are going to welcome you in. There are going to be
That's right.
people that you can come to and be like, this is my first time trying this. Can I
Mm-hmm.
join? Of course. Come on. Let's do this.
Absolutely. Come on
So
in.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you are always going to be welcome. There's power in those numbers. And we're going to need to rise up together
Hmm.
collectively to really create the change, because there's more of us than there are of those people who want to take away our power and
Well,
serve
there's
to us.
so many more of us. So many more of us.
And our
So
ethics.
we're coming up towards the end of our time together. So I really want to make sure that folks walk away with some, I mean, we've already given them a ton of tangible things to do, but like the best resources for clients and patients seeking abortion care or reproductive health support in 2025.
Yeah, a VPN, especially if you're
VPN.
in a state that has banned abortion, that will protect
Hmm.
you from being targeted. If someone comes and captures your computer and says, "See, you were assisting someone, you're going to be criminalized." So VPN will help you get rid of that particular history. So I think that
Hmm.
is a really core one. Look that up. Reach out to people. There's a ton of cybersecurity analysts and individuals who are doing this work. So reaching out to them. I think getting your safety plan together and re-examining it, because a safety plan for some people mean, all right, we have to have food and storage for a month. A safety plan for other people might be, at least for my family, how do we move from the Central Valley up to the border of Canada to get to Toronto? Right? Like, so for
Correct.
some of us are like, how do we get out of the country?
Yes.
But you also have to identify, what is your line? What is the line where you know, for you and your family and the people you love and care for, what is the line where you know, it's bad. Let's go and start stocking up on rice and beans
Hmm.
and flour. Or,
Yes.
when is it time to really check in and be like, hey, friend in Canada, I'm sure you've noticed what's happening. Here's my
Hmm.
plan to get to you. Are you able to like accept us or receive us? Or what do we need to plan together? I think starting to talk about that with people in our
Hmm.
communities is really important. It might feel scary. It might make your
Yes.
palms sweat, but you got to do it scared. You got to do it
Yep.
with sweaty palms. It's just like negotiating your price with a client. It may not
Hmm.
feel comfortable. It's something you have to do though. And
And
I
you have to
think
do it
that is
scared.
really essential, that we need to plan to take care of ourselves, but also doing it in an interdependent way. I think we also need to reach out to our disabled community members, who are
Mm.
often the ones who are always left behind in these kinds of instances. So really thinking about, because disabled people are already thinking about this, the fact that there's so many more of us on the planet than there are non-disabled people is a great example of the power
Mhm.
of numbers. Because disabled people, there's so many more of us, not just because of debilitating experiences, of course,
Mhm.
but because we know how to keep ourselves alive within community, right? So the fact that like me and a handful of other people who I know have never experienced COVID infection is because we mask and we have our
Mhm.
own little portable air purifiers. And yeah, we say
Mhm.
no to certain in-person events. Yes, it's been impacting our lives, but I have not been sick and I have not been on my deathbed, right? And
Love
it's not
this.
going to happen, right? So I think the idea of self-determination and body autonomy, we really need to make a lot more expansive. And sometimes we really need to say yes and no to certain things, and really
Mhm.
understand that consent isn't just within sexual scenarios, that I get to consent yes or no or maybe or ask me later to a party invitation or to
Yes.
something else, right? But offering options. I think that's one of the main things that I've noticed for many providers, is that they think, oh, offering just one thing is enough. We have to offer people options in a variety of different ways, because we
Mhm.
too need them and deserve them as well. So having a plan to follow up and check in on your people, even if it's just sending your friends an emoji via text.
Mhm.
That is following up for a lot of people. It doesn't have to be like a 2-hour phone call check in. It can be other things as well. Use the tools that are available to you. My partner just turned 50 last month. We had a Zoom 50th birthday party. It was a lot of fun. People had a great time, played along,
Love
whatever.
it.
And it was more fun than we thought we could have on a Zoom party. But it takes intention and it takes
Mhm.
dedication. And we have to carve that time out to care for ourselves as well. I think one of the core things that the helpers forget is to take care of ourselves. And we really have to do that first before we can show up for other people. So practicing saying no, practicing stopping, not seeing clients after a particular hour, connecting with,
Absolutely.
I'm not checking my email on Fridays or whatever it might be, creating those reminders that this is how we connect to our wholeness. This is how we stay whole. And also this is how we stay, within our communities and with our families. Because if we're always on our phone, if we're always doom scrolling, as people like to
Yep.
call it, or if we're always seeing clients, then we don't have space to do the other things that we want to do, like just sit on a bench and look at the water, or read a book for
Mhm.
pleasure, or rewatch that TV show we love to binge watch, whatever it is. I think those are really important, and it's okay to care for yourself in ways that feel good and figure it out as you go along. But nothing's static. Everything is changing. Being open to change, That's the only
Yes.
guarantee in the future, is that change is going to come. So I think if that's an area of hope for some people, hang on to that bit of hope that things are going to be changing, and it's not always
Yes.
going to be this stifling and oppressive,
Yes.
that there is possibility for change.
There is.
Yeah, and just show up for it.
There are people, I hope we bring in some of those people who are doing good, who want to do good, but there are people who are doing good. That's one of the things that I've been encouraging my patients to do and all of the therapists that I work with, my students, that your focus is power. And so if you look at the issues that you care the most about, rather than exposing yourself to all of the issues, look at the issues that you care the most about. And reproductive rights is one of the ones that I care the most about. I know you care the most about. And look to the people who are fighting the fight so that you can see that there are things that are happening. There are people who are trying to help. There are people who are resisting what is happening,
Right.
so that you don't feel so paralyzed.
Mhm.
Paralysis is what they want.
Right. Exactly.
Paralysis and not fighting is what they want.
Yeah. Being scared. They want us to be scared, so then we won't do
Yeah.
anything. But I think the reality is we have so much more power than we really give ourselves credit for or even realize. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I love young people so much. They know what is possible. And they're a really powerful force. And we're not connecting with them in the ways that we could. And that to me is also a problem. So thinking about another tool or consideration for people, who are the young people that are mentoring you? Find youth mentors. Find mentors that are disabled. Find mentors who are people of the global majority. Find mentors that aren't your usual, which in our society, I think, is like older people who know more than you or have been doing it longer. That's a lie. That's adult supremacy. Like, just because someone's
We
older
already have
doesn't
a
mean that
Congress full of them. It's
Right.
fine. We're
And
good.
it's
We
proof
good.
that, like, older people do not know better. So yeah, so think about who are the people you need to be in community with and who can mentor you in those spaces, and asking them consent. Think of consent to be your mentor in those capacities. And honestly, it can't be your own children. You cannot be mentored by
Correct.
your own children all the time. It needs to be a relationship that isn't forced, but one that you're intentionally building and creating.
Yes. I am so thankful for you and your work and your absolute dedication to reproductive justice and fighting for all of our clients and patients. I just so much appreciate you. If there's a provider listening, what do you hope they take away from our conversation?
Yeah, I hope that they know there's options. I feel like maybe the language of agency within constraints might resonate for some people. And we all have power. We might not like our options, but we do have power to make them in a particular way. And not making a choice is still having a risk. There's a risk. You're just not in control of the risk. That's possible. You're not accountable to the risk, right? And I think for some people that feels good. But the reality is, if you do nothing, there's also still going to be a risk. So I think I want people to hopefully recognize that there is a possibility, that change is the guarantee, that there are resources. If you feel unprepared, if you're like, oh yeah, I did have a very narrow and limited way of being trained, there are providers and trainings and experiences that will offer you more layers to what you understand and know. And for some people listening, that means you have to learn a whole new way of offering care because you've been trained to do it in a way that harms people and that continues to isolate. And that's not what we know is needed. So being open to that change, being open to the correction, I think is really, really important.
Absolutely. So how do these lovely listeners find you in the world?
Yeah, so I'm intentionally accessible online. So if you type into an internet search browser, my first and last name, you'll find me. Firstandlastname.com, so biancalaureano.com. I also offer courses and classes specifically for the gaps that exist in our training. So that's through Ante-Up PD. So it's ANTEUPPD.com, where all my classes and my SARs are there. So if people are really wanting to see how it's done differently or experience a training where you can turn your camera off, welcome to the offerings that I have. So you can find me there as well. And I'm on social media. I'm just Gen X on social media. So I may not always respond to all the notes, the direct messages, but I do respond to email. So yeah, reach out if you have questions or need some support in any way. I'm happy to be a thought partner.
Thank you again for being here. And folks, if you would like to get a CEU, this is one of those trainings where you can actually learn something different from Bianca and You go to 2xlabs.org and join the membership, and you can get a CEU for this podcast that you heard for free, likely. You can hear it anywhere. The YouTubes, the social medias, you can get it in all of the places. Again, you are a wonderful human being, and folks, thank you for listening all the way to the end, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.